Welcome back, everybody. Just to remind you, on your name badges, you've got each name badge is coloured, and the board, the breakout groups are going to be on each board, and the breakout group you're assigned to is your badge colour. So thanks very much. So we had a fantastic discussion earlier this morning. So there were themes throughout all of the, from each of the things like grants, reporting, funding structures, staff recruitment and retention, and security of tenure. So I'm just going to ask each of the panelists today, starting with Cormac, what 2 recommendations they would like us to have in a report that will go to the HRB for the next grant cycle. And I'm conscious that there's going to be overlap between them, but it would be more so we could have very clear messaging about what they would like to see happen next.
So I think the core funding idea is a great idea. And I think the grants need to be flexible depending on the population that's being served and the population that's being enrolled in the trials. So obviously from a pediatric point of view, the way the grant process worked was very punitive because the institution wasn't ready for it, and that may be a common theme, maybe the way they decided to do things. So allowing us to have more flexibility in how we spend the money, what we use the money for, and having appropriate metrics for that population is probably important as well.
Okay.
Was that 2? That was 1. You're looking at me.
No. I've just when you were going to Sinead, I was thinking that there was you had similar issues in terms of funding models also in your proposal as well, in terms of incentivizing recruitment and the fact that it was a fixed budget, and if you recruited more, you were stuck in terms of how much you had.
Yeah, and I think, as a national group, it's very difficult. We're dealing with one university, but we're a national group. We have links to all the universities around the country, links to all the trials units. It's quite complicated, and the reporting mechanisms don't really help that. I guess it was proposed, that we'd put 30% of our grant. The funding has gone down, and 30% of it is going to the university. I really think, we've all had to report pages and pages of documents against every penny we've got to sites from the HRB, and I just think we should really look at that 30% overheads, what that is actually doing. Do they report 30 pages of documents every 6 months, to the HRB? I'd be interested in that, and anything we could do to streamlining, the reporting would help. And then I guess for our group, personally, we're an academic group. We don't have pharma support. I do think that needs to be taken into account, why we should get, we're a much bigger group, we get the same money, we may have more patients on trials, but we get the same money as another group that may have lots of pharma support. Mm-hmm. And I think we should be incentivising and prioritising academic research, and I don't think it really matters that in the current grant what trial you do or how many patients you go on. I think it's a little bit too generic, and I think there, in this day and age, there has to be incentivisation and some sort of rewards, and they did promise us specific trial funding, but there's been one so far. There's a couple of more coming, great, but like 1 in 4 years, 1 diff in 4 years award is very slim for all the work that we all are doing. Mm-hmm.
Ditto. I think maybe we need 2 different types of funding, the core funding to support the staff we already have, and maybe we were hearing that we do need a bit of a return to the credit system, and the credit system then would be commensurate to the complexity of the patient, getting a young patient on study, maybe getting a phase 1, maybe getting an investigator initiated. That should be worth more. And then the final little one, I would say, not for as much money, but there still needs to be more acknowledgement of the non-interventional studies for the translational work that we do, which is the pipeline, we hope, to our investigator-initiated studies. They still aren't getting the credit that they deserve and aren't supported and they don't ask about those in the same way they should. So revision of the reporting, some sort of a credit system that has flexibility to reflect the amount of work that goes into these populations.
I agree with all of those things. I would say, again, kind of making sure that the clinical trials teams are seen as part of a clinical service, integrating them within the system and making them permanently funded, so the hospital is not at risk, particularly if the grant changes and we aren't funded as much as we were previously. Just the encouragement around enabling people to do that work, particularly for clinicians, and making buyout time real and easy and available to clinicians to go beyond the pharma studies and to create investigator-initiated trials.
I'm just going to probably echo everything as well. Particularly, I think bridging that gap between the HRB and the HSE for funding permanent posts, and that we're not losing posts between grant cycles as well, because obviously they're very difficult to reinstate, particularly in situations of embargo and various other things like that. But also, I do think it's critically important to continue recognising translational research and kind of real-world evidence as well, because these are the basis of IATs, but they also allow an opportunity for us to continue to develop and maintain our relationships with our academic partners, and that's really crucial for sustainability of the entire process.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with everybody too. I do want to go back to what Sinead said around the overhead. We have a great relationship on the ground with our collaborators in our academic institution, but when I asked, what are you doing with the 30%, I was told, well, that's for the light and the computers and for the HR. And I was like, no, it's not. That's not in the academic institution. That's in our hospital. We're already paying for those things. And we did negotiate a bit from there. But I think that idea that the academic institution took this 30% overhead has to be absolutely challenged. So my two things for you, Seamus, are one, core funding for all sites, everyone sitting here, not the kind of competitive nature where people are left out to begin with. Give us core funding for key roles to begin with, number one. And number two, let the sites decide how they want to have the financial structures. In other words, don't make us go to an academic partner and create ridiculous bureaucracy. It may work perfectly well for someone to directly negotiate in terms of money going to you and then out to the sites, or it may work differently with different hospitals. But let us decide how the flow of information and funding is.
And obviously, I seriously echo all those comments so far, but in addition, I suppose in terms of the renewal process, all these grants have been awarded to these institutions already who have gone through, jumped through a lot of hoops to achieve the first set of funding. So a simplified renewal process as opposed to a whole new application would be, it'd save a whole lot of time and effort, which can be better invested in clinical trials.
Thank you. I would just to echo whatever was said is very important, and I would agree that the funding model should be more sustainable. Funding model should be a form of infrastructure rather than competitive, because competitiveness goes down to competition between patients, and patients should have equal access to equal funding and equal opportunities across different hospital groups, different regions. The second thing that I think it's worth of reflecting is the metrics that we are providing back to the founder, to the HRB. And this metrics, as it is at the moment, this incentivize from engaging us as a unit into high risk, heavy duty, heavy resource, heavy clinical trials. It's much easier to go into a territory of non-interventional or maybe non-regulated trial that absorb heavy, intensive, resource-heavy clinical trials. So that should be, in my opinion, reflected in the way that grant is potentially funded and structured. Because we need to be ambitious, and we need to have appetite between our hospital groups to absorb clinical trials that are actually outcome changing, not only, I need to say it, quality of life changing.
So we heard, thank you. There was a very interesting, if you hold on to that. So thank you. There was a very interesting presentation this morning from Donald Brennan, and I think that report is going to be key in terms of moving things forward in our system. So, and he touched on various points. Are there additional? I mean, there are several members of the National Clinical Oversight Group here today. are there things in that document that you would also like to see, or what would you prioritise in that report? Anybody?
I thought you were going to speak. So I think because I think the explanation was that it was mostly pharma-driven or pharma-sponsored trials. Obviously, we really do academic trials, so investigator-initiated. So I'd be very interested in the translation, and also the multinational, multi-site trial, where there has to be an Irish institution as the national sponsor or coordinating site and navigating. So the table was really clear and very helpful that Donald showed, but disseminating that and getting the hospitals to believe it. So it's all, I mean, it's great and it will be very helpful, but everybody knows the DPO of their hospital. I mean, it's completely up to them. If they're reasonable and you can talk to them, then great, but sometimes the time it takes to persuade them and the risk that they think is involved is it's farcical. So I think if that is a dogma and a national directive, that will be very helpful. But it's a great step forward.
I think I'm just going to CC Donald Brennan in every email I have with my DPIA. I was thinking. Get things sorted very quickly. It's fantastic progress, and I was delighted to hear his presentation.
I think there was a lot of iterative discussion about that slide and about making it absolutely a binary slide. There was a subscript A in the slide in its first iteration with a small footnote on that, and that was deleted with trenchant, strident views, wasn't it?
Just one of the small notes, but I think important, is the transition to the metric being time to first patient, not just time to opening the trials, because that puts the responsibility on all of us. It's easy for us to blame the DPO or the contracts and the legal team, but once the trial is open, so there's that time, and it's us actually putting our money where the talk is and actually getting a participant on the trial. That matters, and I think that's an important differentiation when they're doing their metrics.
Okay.
It'll be great.
Thank you. I think we've reached thematic exhaustion. I just want to thank all of our speakers this morning, because I'm conscious that there was a lot of work and thought put into the slides and their presentations this morning. And it was really worthwhile in terms of seeing the variety of work that's happening and the learnings that are occurring from it. I suspect if there was another grant proposal tomorrow, it would be a much richer one than the one that was done 5 years ago. And that's a testimony to all of the work of the people in this room and of the leadership of the people on the stage here and of their colleagues. So I'd like to just thank you very much. It was an excellent morning and much appreciated. So we have 4 breakout sessions now, and your name badge is obviously assigned to each one, and I'm thankful to our patient partners for leading each one for us. So the 4 ones are improving time to first patient, what we need to do, securing more studies, trials without drugs, which was a feature of this morning's, and then finally career development and opportunities and how we would develop that. I thought some of the supportive measures in some of the clusters in terms of sponsoring of PhDs and mentoring of MD and other students, but also a lot of nursing support was excellent. And our final session then would be to talk about feedback from the groups, and that will go towards preparing the report that we've talked about. And we would hope that will also, that report to be ready before the National Clinical Trials Oversight Group recommendations are finalised, so we can feed back into them, so that can be integrated into it, particularly so Cormac's comments, for instance, about non-industry sponsored trials, and that's what we're going to do in the NCTOG group relates to industry trial, but that should trickle down to other trials as well. It's not just about pharma-sponsored drugs. We have to grow our own, and that will only happen if they're supported as well. So thank you very much.